All right, so if you're watching this video, you're a little confused on how to begin for example 1. So my first piece of advice would be, off to the side, let's determine a few values. Our amplitude, our period, and our midline. So to start, the midline is halfway between your maximum and your minimum. So as we can see, our minimum is at -2. Our maximum is at 4, so -2 plus 4 divided by 2. We get 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So one thing we know about our equation is that the d value will equal 1. Well, looking at all our options have d values of 1. The next thing we're going to determine is our amplitude, which is the distance from our midline to our maximum. So my amplitude would be found by saying my maximum's at 4, my midline's at 1. We have an amplitude of 3. All right, the next thing we're going to do is find our period. We know 5 points make up our period, and I always recommend, if possible, start where x is 0. So we do have a point starting at 0, so 0, second point, third point, fourth point, fifth point. So our period spans from 0 to 2 pi. Why do we find our period? Well, because it allows us to solve for our b value. So no matter what, on our summary sheets, as we know, our period is equal to 2 pi over b. And we found out in this situation, our period was 2 pi. To solve for our b value, we cross multiply and we do 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi, equals 2 pi times b. We want to get b by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. And we see that 2 pi divided by 2 pi is 1. All right, so now we're going to take a look. We know that a sine graph has to start at the midline. And if it's a positive a value, it has to go to the maximum after. So our c value here, there's nothing inside added or subtracted to the x, so our c is 0. So at 0, is it at the midline? Yes, check. And does it go to a maximum? Check. So this is one possible situation to model our graph. All right, let's check for b. Again, if it's a sine graph, it has to start at the midline, and our a value is positive, so it'll go to the max. So this one is saying when our phase shift is pi, so let's check. At pi, awesome, it's at the midline. However, notice it's going down to the minimum, so this one does not work. All right, now let's check in on c. Cosine can start at the maximum or minimum. However, notice that I have a positive a value for cosine, which means it has to start at the maximum. There's nothing added or subtracted to our x on the inside, meaning that's when c equals 0. At 0, it is at the midline, meaning that doesn't work at all. Now if we check in again for d, it's saying a sine graph, so we know sine starts at our midline, but this time it's a negative a value, so it'll go to a minimum. And our c value we see is pi. So let's take a look. At pi, it's starting at our midline, okay, check. And then it's going down to our minimum. Check. So D also models a possible equation for the graph. Now we check E. Negative A value cosine will start at a minimum. And then we see here our C value is 3 pi over 2. Okay, so 3 pi over 2 on our graph, well, that is at a minimum, and our amplitude and everything works. So this is also another possible solution. All right, again, sine starts at the midline. Our A value is negative here, meaning it'll go to the min. And now, oh, we haven't encountered the positive pi over 2 yet, so it's going to be opposite. So C is at negative pi over 2. Let's check this. At negative pi over 2, it's at a minimum, so it does not work for a possible equation of this graph. So now that you know this process, try and see if G, H, or I satisfies the equation.